So I think I should first start today with the Gita Dhyanam Shlokas. Okay. I'm not able to see. Why am I not able to see all of you? You can see me? You can see me because my camera is on, right?
Yes, I can see you. This laptop camera doesn't work properly, so
Okay,
that's why
that's fine. Sure. Anyway, we'll get started on this and then I will So Hari Om everyone, welcome. Today we are going to start with the 10th chapter shlokas. So we will chant the entire Gita Dhyanam, which we do always when we start the new chapter. Oh, oh, oh. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purna Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrudaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Geetamrutam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadronatata Jayatradajala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Rananadi Kaivatraka Keshavaha Parasharyavacha Saroja Mamalam Geetartha Gandhotkatam Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikadaha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadairaharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripa Tamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanisadaihi Gayantiyam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyah Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So you can still see my screen, right? Hari Om?
Hari Om,
Hari Om.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we can see.
We can
Okay.
see you, but not the screen that you have shared.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
only
with the
you.
previous,
Yeah.
okay. Even with the previous one, is it? Previous presentation?
We did not see any of the Gita Dhyanam.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
No.
That's interesting. Let's see if this works.
We can see you though. Oh, now we can. Now we can.
Okay, very good. Let me make sure. So you're seeing one screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, so today we start with the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Last week we actually went through a very brief introduction since we're finishing the 9th chapter. So, we wanted to give a slight introduction to how it connects with the 10th chapter itself. So in order to connect it to the 10th chapter, we want to go back again to the aspect of the fact, where does the 10th chapter really reside in the flow of the whole Bhagavad Gita? As we've talked about before, Bhagavad Gita has, you can kind of divide that into 3 parts based on the Mahavakya of Tat Tvam Asi. And the first part talks about the Tvam, or who am I? First of all, we need to dispel the notion of who I think I am. So, for example, when we are young, just getting ready to finish the university or college and we're going to work, we are given a certain position in the company. We start off with an assistant, research assistant, or administrative assistant, and somehow the labels stick to us, and we think this is who I am, and anything and everything I do at work, I work through that garb, or the kosha, or the clothing, or the role of that assistant, right? Then we take on a different role, maybe the research supervisor, and then manager, and then director, and all this. But in and through all this, we somehow feel that that is who I am. And that label just sticks to us so much, right? So too for us, like today when I'm talking to you as Sunitha, that label of Sunitha is so ingrained in me that if anything and everything that happens to me, I kind of uh, allow that thing for me to get affected by it, right? So the first 6 chapters really is trying to dispel this notion of, yes, you may be Sunitha working in this world, but think through really who you are. So we went through that whole aspect in the first 6 chapters. And then from the 7th chapter on, the aspect of Tat is emerging out. We are trying to really study who is this Tat. And then finally, of course, the relation of Tat Tvam Asi. So for this chapter to begin, we really need to go back and revisit some of the shlokas from the 7th chapter. So it was in 7th chapter is the beginning of this, the 6 chapters on Tvam, on Tat. So here we have to really think through on what did Lord Krishna say in the 7th chapter. Because like you can see this chapter, from after the first few initial shlokas, in the 7th chapter, Krishna talks about how, he can be perceived in 2 different ways. One way is things that we are familiar with, what we see in the world. And that he calls this as apara prakriti. And then he talks about this aspect, which is the higher part of him, which is the para prakriti. So it's almost like, when we think about anything, if I take this light or if I take the phone, there are 2 major aspects to it. Forget about all the apps and everything which is in the phone. We have the hardware, and then we have, of course, the software, but then we have something even beyond that, which is the power which runs all these things, right? So this phone, which has the software and the hardware combination through which we do everything in this world, can be thought about as the apara prakriti. And the power which is doing the whole thing is the para prakriti. Okay, this is just a kind of a small analogy, but the analogy actually fails when we are starting to describe this whole world and really what we are trying to get to as a this aspect of what this tat is. Okay, so here in the shlokas from chapter 7, we saw the shlokas, which is Bhumi Rapo Nalo Vayuhu Kam Mano Buddhi Revacha Ahankara Itiyam Me Bhinna Prakriti Revacha. So, he describes this entire world, which is made of the earth, water, fire, air. And then he also describes not just the gross aspects, but also the subtle aspects, which is mind, intellect, and ego. Okay. So this whole thing which we are familiar with, he calls this in the next shloka as the lower nature. Okay. I mean, here, of course, the word inferior is used, but you can look at this as the lower nature. So he says, that is my lower nature, which all of you can see, and you get attracted to it, and you function in this world, everything through this 8-fold prakriti. That is apare. So apare yamiti swanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhuta mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. But he says, that lower nature is actually different from my higher nature. So that prakriti vidhi me param, so know who that I am. Jiva bhutam, that aspect, that fundamental aspect which is keeping me running, is actually the substratum on which the entire world is held. Okay, so this is kind of very important to understand these 2 shlokas. Again, this is a review. The 10th chapter is based on the 7th chapter, and these 2 things is where the 10th chapter really starts off. So even though we see that the lower part of it is inert, and the lower part is something that we all can relate to, but actually there is a higher part of it. And that is the same relation which I wanted to bring to who is Sunitha and who is really, really Sunitha. So Sunitha is is the way I function in the world, which we call as the Vachyartha. This is a terminology that I don't know if you remember when we were doing the Vedanta classes, So it is a Vachyartha, but the Lakshyartha is that aspect of the Atman. Okay. So that is how this is also looked at. So there is one aspect of me which is functioning, but there is another aspect because of which Sunitha is functioning. Okay. So these 2 things you can keep in mind. And then Then he talks about that, in that same chapter, etadyo dini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham krishnasya jagatah prabhava pralayastata. So he says both comparison are how this entire universe has come about. So everything that you see, the mountains, all this, every mountains, rivers, beings, technology, artificial intelligence, chat GPT, and all the variations of the cousins of chat GPT, everything is actually how the whole thing has come about. And know that aham krishnasya jagatah prabhava pralayastata. I am the source and also the resolution. So ultimately, who is really that ultimate source we need to know? So he says, Krishna says, so know me as not only the manifestations, but also know me as that power, that highest power. That is who I am. And it is in that substratum that everything starts and everything dissolves. And last week, when Meena brought up this shloka of that space and the wind and everything, I think it was two classes before. In this whole space, this entire building resides, right? 50 years from now, this building, what I'm there, is not going to be there. Maybe this might get dissolved and something else may come about. But what is constant is the space, correct? So in this space, everything is there. So too, he's saying, ultimately, who is the constant factor? It is that para-prakriti. I am that para-prakriti. So know me as a para-prakriti. That is very important. That is the most important. Everything else comes and goes. Okay. So here I've given this example of this mud pot. And we have lots of mud pots. Okay, this is a very classic Vedanta example where if you look at this one mud pot, immediately, our mind actually goes to the shape of the mud pot, the size, the color, and what I can use it for, correct? But if I tell you that this entire mud pot is nothing but mud, okay? It is nothing but mud, which has been shaped into the form. Now you see the same mud pot in two different ways. One is, there is this thing called mud, and there is this thing which has been shaped into this thing because of which I can use it, right? So Krishna is wanting us to shift our mind attention using this kind of examples, to the mud, which is really most important, okay? Without the mud, you cannot have the mud pot, correct? So too, then he says, if you can think about this, now I don't have to go to every mud pot and tell you that, okay, in this mud pot, this is the aspect by which, because you can use it, but then it is all mud. At the end of the day, if I can grasp this concept of mud pot, then I can actually grasp the entire concept of this entire creation, which is there, as nothing but a manifestation of that absolute reality. But it is so hard for us to do that, right? We live in this world, we get enamored with everything, and we think that is the reality. But in and through everything that we see, we have to go beyond it and see the essence of what it is, and which is what in 7th chapter, that this is the last shloka, that whole series, which I wanted to bring about here. He says, Mattav parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam proktam sutre manigana iva. This sutre manigana iva is the most important phrase here. And it is something, if you constantly remember and meditate upon this, you will see that whenever things happen, you can actually think what is the most important and what is not important. That is what he's trying to show here, which is ultimately he's trying to say that higher than me, there is actually nothing else, O Krishna, O Arjuna. Mai sarvam idam protam. Sutre manigana iva. Like, this entire set of pearls would not have existed but for the thread which is holding it together. Correct? So I need to go beyond this glamour and everything of what this world is trying to show and focus upon the thread which is holding everything together. So this set of 4 shlokas actually is the point where 10th chapter is focusing on, because this chapter is again beautiful in the sense it talks about the glories. It talks about the glories of Bhagwan, in and through everything. And that part of it is where, so this chapter is actually called as Vibhuti Yoga, because it describes about this power of the Lord. It describes about the power of the Lord. It describes about also the pervasiveness, the subtlety, the spread, if you wish, in and through all the most beautiful things. And I just put, things like the mountains, the rivers, the beautiful, sunset. All these are nothing but that glory, the vibhuti of that Lord. And in and through all this duality, plurality that we see, the diversity that we see, in and through all that is nothing but that Lord which is everywhere. But I'm unable to see that, just like how the pearl necklace, I'm unable to see the thread because my mind is so focused on that beautiful pearls and everything. And when I see the pearls, for example, immediately the thought comes in, oh, it looks so good on the neck of this person or that person, or, our mind just goes into all that. But Krishna is saying, go beyond that, go beyond that. See me in and through everything, all these vibhutis. That is the most beautiful thing of nature. That is what nature is all about. So that is the aspect that the world is actually not separate from not just who I am, but world is not even separate from that God. God doesn't just exist in Tirupati or Brideshwara temple or anything. God is everywhere. God is in and through everything. The water, the mountains, everything is nothing but that Brahman, that Narayana. And that is the part that he wants us to think in and through everything. And so our view, unfortunately, is shaped by what we hear and what we understand, but it is actually beyond that. I need to go much, much beyond that. So when I see that the whole world is nothing but an expression of that Narayana, of that Brahman, then I will be much, much more um, open, much more flexible, much more compassionate to in and through everybody who's coming into my life is nothing but that Narayana, all the joys, all the sorrows, everything is something happening which is temporary, which is in the field of what I'm functioning in. And when I do this, then my own life becomes beautiful, So this is sort of the introduction really to the 10th chapter. Any questions so far before we start into the 10th?
Hari Om, thank you so much for connecting the now that thank you so much for connecting those bringing those 5 slokas so that we know how first he's talking about how he talks about all the these I really appreciate these 5 slokas like you were explaining. I could just mentally envision the entire 10th chapter, how everything is based and how it is a continuation of these 5 shlokas. Thank you so much for.
You're welcome. You're welcome. No, it is because, if I'm not able, if I don't connect Bhagavad Gita to my own life, right? If I only look at it as something which is a spiritual text, which is very beautiful to read, it calms my mind down, all that, then that is not enough. It has to do something much more than that. I need to connect it to it, I when I'm in joy, of course, we never think about God, but when I'm in despair, when I'm struggling or something, and I'm asking, oh God, where are you? Come and help me. And Krishna is saying, I'm everywhere. I'm right next to you. I'm in you. You know. So why are you not looking at me that way? So that is why this chapter is important. This chapter is bringing so close the truth home to us, to our own home, to our this. In fact, the first shloka itself starts off that way. Krishna is saying, "I'm just so close to you, and I'm there to help you. And if you only know me, that I'm there everywhere, you never ever. I mean, first of all, you're never far away from me. That is one thing. But I'm there in every way, in every place, in every form, in anything you want, I'm there for you. What a comforting statement, right? How beautiful that is to come and help us. So that's why this whole 10th chapter is just a kind of it's an upasana, at the mind level. I'm just reveling in the beauty of that Brahman in the form of all the manifestations and in the form of all the vibhutis. And that is why this chapter is called as Vibhuti Yoga. And this chapter has got about 42 verses. And it's all about just praising praising Bhagwan in all his infinite glories, you know. Yeah. So Anand, do you have something
Hariom.
to add to it? See, I knew you would say it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the details and then the analogy between the 7th chapter and 10th chapter. The Vibhuti Yoga as we're just getting started, all the glories, so the details. Just in the Purush Sukta, Bhagavan says like, right, he says he's in and through us. It says like, Niratoyata Majjasta Vijilyate Bhas. So he is a small, like it's like a edge of a rice kind of, so that's where he stays, which is always there. And another analogy is when you said a rope and snake, basically, the actual rope is there when we thought the snake was there. So as you were saying, world is and Bhagavan are at one place. They are not separated. So
That's
just the
right.
analogy, kind of it reminds me of the analogy. Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Exactly. Meena, did you have anything?
As everybody said, the way you went back to the 7th chapter, and it's kind of recollection for us, what you said about earlier and today. I mean, it's a kind of, if we can connect it, and it's very, very informative. Thank you so much for bringing that to all of us. And, so now we have an idea of what Radha Krishna is going to talk about in the 10th chapter. So it's a kind of glimpse you gave. Thanks so much.
Correct. So this is very important, just also because, 9th chapter was very heavy. It was very intense. Because after explaining the 7th chapter, in 8th chapter, there was a lot of discussion about, we want to know who that Brahman is. We want to know who Bhagwan is. And many times we end up in certain rituals and everything, thinking that that is going to give me the ultimate moksha. So in 8th chapter, there was a slight deviation to talk about what we call this as Krama Mukti and Jivan Mukti. And so that was explained beautifully about the fact that when we do certain rituals to gain certain gross gains in the sense, I need a better life, I need a better body, I need better relationships, all that. That is also allowed in Hinduism, and there is a way to do it. But in 8th chapter, there was this aspect which was described that when you do all this, you can actually get what you want. But to get to moksha, what do you need to do? So all that was described in 8th. But when we came to 9th, Krishna actually focused a lot on the para prakriti. The para prakriti, which was important for us to know, which is that higher power and everything. And he, in those shlokas 3 and 4, which was really the most mind-boggling shlokas of 9th chapter, which you can relate it to the 16th shloka of 2nd chapter, where he really gives that aspect of, I am in everything, but they're in me, but I'm not in them, those shlokas that was described. So now he comes back to 10th chapter because he knows that while we are, we may not be so engrossed in the world, we are mostly at a mind level. We need ways to calm down our mind. Today we talk about mindfulness, meditation, all that so much. But what does mindfulness do, and what does Bhagavad Gita do for us? This is definitely a question that needs to be asked and pondered upon, because only if we have a good understanding of who I am at the level of body, mind, and intellect, and very, very important is this mind level, how can we actually have a grip on ourselves? So mindfulness is a very temporary exercise for us to calm our mind so that the mind is available for whatever situation we want to get into. But then how do we get to a permanent mindful state? The permanent mindful state is that state where I'm at the lowest excited level, And to get to the lowest excited level, my mind has to be in complete awe of everything that is in front of me. I need to pull myself out of this limited jiva that I think I am. I am actually this small thing, but I think about myself as so big, right? So Krishna wants to fill my mind with that bigness of the whole universe, the vastness, the greatness, so that I understand my own relation with the universe. So that is what, he wants to bring in here at the mind level. He wants to make us be in awe of everything, So that's so Krishna is after that 9th chapter explaining that power, that paraprakriti and everything, and then finally says, you just surrender to me. And here you see that how I can surrender. When I see the greatness, the beauty of this one, I just surrender to the majesty. I mean, I still remember my first trip to US in 1985, I think. I came for a conference to Canada, I remember, while I was still doing my PhD in IIT at that time. And I saw the Niagara Falls. And those days, we didn't have internet, we didn't have photographs, nothing. But here you are in front of this Niagara Falls and you're in complete awe. I mean, that experience of standing, in that boat in front of Niagara Falls is just something I still remember. And that's how you will see some of the things described in the 10th chapter. You're in complete awe. Same thing with the Grand Canyon. It's just mind-boggling that there is this aspect of the earth and the fact that you can stand next to it, and it's just, you cannot even describe, explain. Your mind just completely gets stilled, you know? And that is really the mindfulness, where your mind is completely stilled, completely in awe of everything. Now, wouldn't that be great if I can have that picture all the time in my mind? Then you can see how the mind is really, really quiet, and it's available to do really the most important things, Because the mind is not quiet, we get engaged in all petty things, small things. We need to expand our mind. So this expansion of the mind is where this 10th chapter really comes. And so in Shloka 1 itself, Krishna actually, after concluding this 9th chapter, where he says, just surrender to me, he gives us 5 qualifications, right?
Hari Om.
So, yes, go ahead, Meena.
Sorry to interrupt. So also from the 9th chapter, what we learned is the easiest way, that's what Lord Krishna teaches, easiest way to attain his lotus feet. Very simple things like giving water or whatever it is. I mean, we don't have to struggle hard. That's what he teaches us. Even simple things, but you can come into my lotus feet. So that was very, very nice of the 9th chapter, even water or some pushpa, something. And then
Correct.
about me in your mind, and I'm there for you.
Exactly.
That was really, really good. That was the good teaching from 9th chapter from Lord Krishna.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And he actually gives that particular shloka after explaining about the fact that, we go to the Lord with uh, big, big things, thinking that God will give me the big things. Here he's saying, even if you give me the patram and pushpam, palam toyam, yome bhaktya pranashruti, he's saying, uh, again, the connection to the 10th chapter with that particular shloka is, at the end of the day, the whole world is nothing but his, right?
Yes.
So
exactly.
I am taking something from his own garden and I'm giving it back to him.
Yes. Yeah. Ultimately, yes, everything is God's, and we are taking from God's garden and giving it to him. And he's happy with that.
He's just happy with that. He's saying, I don't even need, and in that shloka, he says, okay, you're giving it back to me because you feel you want to give it to me. And that beautiful reference I remember I said during that time was, how Swami Chimananda, he connects that to saying that at the end of the day, the reason you want to give him something is, it's just like how for a child, when you're feeding the child, you have to use a spoon or something to feed the child for the food to go in, right?
Yeah.
So to all these things, patram pushpam palam toyam, are nothing but kind of things, materials which you're showing the devotion. That's just ways in which to show a devotion. And he follows that beautifully with the next shloka in that chapter where he says, it doesn't matter even if you don't do all this, but whatever you do, just think of me. Ye Juhosi, ye Dashnasi, everything, whatever you offer, everything. Yeah.
So nice. Thank you so much. Yeah.
No, thank you for reminding that shloka here. So we see that, so Krishna actually starts in this chapter, it doesn't start with Arjuna asking a question, but actually Krishna sees in Arjuna that Arjuna is wanting to know more, So as a good teacher, he is already sensing that, he is now really been able to impress on Arjuna this teaching. And so he wants to give him more ideas for Arjuna to seek him out. So how are the ways to seek him out? So that's where, he starts to explain about himself, about his own glories. Now, one may think that, Krishna is boasting about himself, but it's actually not. He's trying to say that, what, if you are, okay, you're looking at your phone all the time because you want to text or whatever. Imagine that phone, the texting is me. imagine what you're eating is me. Imagine, so like that, he wants the mind to not focus on ourselves, but focus on something else, you know. So that is the whole idea. He's, of course, um, like just like how we say, with the phone, ultimately, when I look at the phone, my mind, of course, is now too much into all the apps and what the apps can do. And of course, my relationships with people and how I can use the phone. But even in there, what he's trying to say is when you look at the phone and everything, think about what is driving that phone. Shift your attention to the power that is making the phone be what it is. Once I focus my mind to that power, then I recognize really the most powerful aspect of that instrument, right? It is not just the apps and everything, because apps are very, very minute in its application compared to the power which is driving not just that particular app, but everything. So too, now you think about that same power which exists in everything. So soon, the mind just expands without even knowing what I'm doing. And my vision just expands to see that Narayana everywhere. So when I do this, my mind again, becomes so much more quieter, calm, and that is really good for my own welfare. So that is why in this shloka, we'll start chanting this. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Ath Dashamodhyayah Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Bhuya Eva Mahabaho Shrunu me paramam vachah Shrunu me paramam vachah Yatteham priyamanaya Yatteham priyamanaya Vakshyami hita kamyaya Vakshyami hita kamyaya. So he's saying Bhuya Eva, which simply means, I'm telling you again, oh great Arjuna, Mahabaho, so Shrunu. Again, if you remember a long time back in one of the things where he uses this word Shrunu, to say that listen with complete attention, keep everything aside, all the phones, everything. And even, this is a time where Krishna is saying, I'm going to give you some things which will really, really help you. He says, which to you who are delighted to hear. So Priya, you're so here. But I like this word where he says, Vakshyami hita kamyaya. I'm saying this only for your own welfare. I'm not doing this. I'm not here to boast about myself, nothing. But I'm actually saying all this because by listening to this, you will see how your mind will expand. And by the expansion of the mind, you're going to be less focused upon yourself. And when you're less focused upon yourself, then you will not really go through all this mental problems, worries, anxieties, hopes, all these things which happens only in a mind. You'll be away from it because I'm there to take care of you, of course, which he says again in the shloka 22 of chapter 9, which is that, yoga kshema mahamyaham. I'm there to take care of it. Now you just relax and I will tell you everything about me and this one. So he says, Priyamanam, Arjuna, you are very, you're such a delight to talk to, because you're truly now understood this philosophy, So again, Krishna's motive here is only purely the welfare of us. That is why he wants to do it. And he wants to tell us also, like I said, when I compared this to mindfulness, this is bhakti yoga. By us focusing on something higher than myself, my mind becomes much quieter. And this is almost absolutely needed as a first step before I get into mindfulness, my meditation or whatever, because the mind is like a monkey, you know, the mind is always wanting to grab hold of something. So why don't I give the mind something which is very much more beautiful, much more vast, much more bigger than myself to hold on? And if I do that, then the mind itself sort of starts to quieten down. And that is why you say it is hita kamyaya. This is only for your own welfare. Krishna, as a true teacher, is only wishing for the best for his student. So that is the first shloka. So bhuya eva mahabhaho shrunu me paramam vachaha. I'm going to talk to you about that. Listen, the great knowledge. Yatta te aham priyamanaya. For me, you're so ready to hear this. You're so delighted to hear this. Vakshyami, I'm going to talk to you about this, which is hita. Hita means, which is good for you. Kamyaya. So anything and everything you do, in that, it is going to help you very much.
Hari Om Shruno means listen, right?
Right.
Okay.
Shruno means listen. Listen in its with 100% attention. And again, we in Vedanta, we have at the mental level, the exercises are Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, right? So if my listening is really good, I don't have to do anything. That's why the word Shrunu is so important. I mean, we have seen in our own, when we were young, in our classes, there would be some people who don't have to study a lot before the examination. Why is that? Because their listening skill has been so powerful, they are able to listen to the essence of what the teacher is trying to say,
Without any diversion.
Without any diversion, exactly.
Thank you.
So,
Different from hearing.
Different from hearing. Exactly. Sometimes hearing is multitasking, right? I hear this in the midst of everything else. Is that what you wanted to say, Geeta?
No, I'm just trying to differentiate between hearing and listening. That's what, maybe that's what you explained right now.
Correct.
Like two things. Okay.
Yeah. Listening is where my entire attention is on the teacher and what the teacher is trying to say. So, and here, it's very important. This qualification of listening is very important because Krishna in this chapter is going to expose us to the greatness of this world, the greatness of the universe. And my mind is actually not ready for it yet, because he's going to explain the greatness as the subtlety, the pervasiveness, the power. That's how he's going to describe it. And since my mind is not ready, I have to develop certain qualifications to make the mind ready so that the Shrunu part of it, the listening, becomes really, really, really effective, because he's going to talk about that Lord which is totally invisible or appears to be invisible to us, and yet is so glorified. So if I don't know how to listen, then I will miss some key points. I will not be able to grasp the subtlety of the message, So that is why he wants to make sure that we are listening to this. And so in the next shloka, he says, Name vidu suraganaha, Name vidu suraganaha, Prabhavam namaharshayaha, Prabhavam namaharshayaha, Ahamadir hi devanam, ahamadir hi devanam maharshinam cha sarvashah. Maharshinam cha sarvashah. So he is, slowly trying to get us to understand the greatness of the whole world, his glories. So he's saying, just so that Arjuna doesn't forget, he wants to say, Name viduhu suraganaha. So suraganaha, these are actually beings who are endowed with a natural capacity to know things divine. Okay. So in this case, even they may fall short of grasping the full import of who Krishna is. Like he's saying, even the Sapta Maharishis, that's why it's Sapta Maharishi, Maharshinam, Sapta Maharishis, the 7 ancient rishis, who were born from the mind of this Hiranyagarbha. Even they are not in a position to know the origin of the Lord. So he says, Name Vidu Suraganaha, my origin, neither the hosts of the heavens, nor do the Saptarishis know, but I am Aham, Adihi, even, from the beginning. I am the source of all the Devas. The Devas like, Varuna, Indra, Surya. I am actually the source from where all these great Devas have come by. And Maharshi Nam cha Sarvashaha, and all these great Mahatmas. So I'm actually the source of the gods and even the rishis. And but then we get hung up on just looking at the effects, and we are never able to see the cause. Just like I gave that example of the mud pot. I look at the mud pot, I see the utility, the value, and everything, but I never think that it's all nothing but mud, right? So in and through all this, he wants to show first, kind of lay in the beginning itself. Guess what? I am the origin. I am behind all this. This even the Saptarishis do not know, do not know in the sense not that they are not capable of knowing, they are capable of knowing, but I am this. So he's trying to, in a sense, say that, I really, he's kind of giving Arjuna the benefit of doubt. He's giving Arjuna, making him feel that he's the best. And he says, I want to really give you the very best of who I am. I'm ready to give you the secret, which he did in the 9th chapter. And he says, here from the first shloka, he says, I don't know of anybody else who would have that capacity to know who I am. Okay. So that is why I'm doing it. Just like how in Mahabharata, Drona, tells Arjuna, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you my knowledge. That way Krishna is saying here that I'm giving you the ultimate knowledge here. And that is, I am the origin. I am the source. I am the source of everything. Name vidusuraganaha prabhavam namaharshayaha. Aham adihi hi devana. I was there even before the devas and the maharishis. So I'm the source of all of them. And then moving on to the 3rd shloka, one may ask, so what is, why do I care? Why do I really need to know about Ishvara? Why do I need to know about the shlokas? So in this shloka, Krishna, he says ultimately that if you have that, if you know this knowledge, if you develop the devotion towards me, and the only way we can develop the devotion, I mean, it's like, for example, what is that? Michael Phelps, I remember, if somebody had told me Michael Phelps is a great swimmer, why do I care? Why do, it doesn't matter to me. But the minute somebody says, Michael Phelps got the 7 Olympic medals, then I'm very curious to know, how did he get these medals? What did he do which is so special that helped him to do this? And then I also want to be like Michael Phelps. I want to really develop myself, right? So that is the way Krishna is using this tactic of education, where first, in the first shloka, he wants to say, Arjuna, you're the best of, you enjoy so much. So I'm telling you, And then in the second shloka, he's already telling him this, the best part of him. He could have said, I'm the person who actually makes the iPhone or whatever, But no, he's going all the way to the source. He's giving him the PhD knowledge. He says, I'm the origin for everything. So know me. So then in the third shloka, he says, I'll tell you what you're going to get by what are you going to get by really listening to all this. That is what he's saying. So what one really gets is really this ability of viveka as one of them. Of course, there's so many things which the shloka says, but the most critical thing is so very important, viveka. Can somebody tell me what viveka really means?
Is it jnanam?
It is knowledge. It will ultimately give you knowledge.
Ultimate knowledge.
Yes, ultimately it gives you that, but what does it mean? As a quality, what does it mean? What you said?
Sunitha,
Yeah.
it is discriminating between what is real and what's not real.
Correct, exactly.
Permanent, what's temporary.
Permanent, but yes, exactly.
Okay.
So in Tattva Bodh, that beautiful definition is there. And if I can only know this one quality, it really would help us. So when Jayashree said, it helps me to discriminate between real and unreal, temporary versus permanent. And actually, there's one more which doesn't come immediately to my mind. There's three things, So, like, for example, just a simple basic example. We spoke about this earlier. When, suppose I'm in a situation and somebody really is upset with me about something I would have done. Now, is this temporary or is it permanent? Immediately, I can ask this question, right? I can say that this is a temporary thing, so I shouldn't get too upset about it. I acknowledge, yes, this has happened, and this is probably the reason, and then I move on. So Viveka gives me that ability to discriminate in as simple situation as that, right? Geeta, you wanted to say something?
No,
Yeah.
sorry, I removed it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So, yeah, go ahead, Anand.
Yeah, it's a discrimination again. Satya viveka and the nitya viveka.
Yeah, Nitya Viveka.
Anitya viveka.
Anitya, Anitya.
Satya. And one more maybe there.
Yeah, there is
Sat and
three.
Asat. Yeah.
Yes, truth and the untruth, I guess. I think that's what it is. I have to go back. Sat, Asat. Yeah. So the point about it is, now let's look at this real and unreal, Nitya and Anitya. Is it really the absolute reality? If it's not, then I shouldn't be too worried about it, right? So Viveka is that ability to discriminate, and this discrimination becomes sharper and sharper when my mind expands. And when I look at myself as part of everything, then my attitude towards anything that happens to me becomes is tempered by the fact that I am part of everything. So, for example, like when I gave this example, when somebody gets upset with me because I didn't do something properly or whatever, if I take completely this thing that, oh my God, this happened to me, and how can I be like this? How can I this one? Instead of that, if I think about it, that, okay, I'm part of this whole thing, I'll try to do the best I can so that the whole world can benefit by me being better, then automatically my attitude changes. Right. So that is the aspect of discrimination is such a beautiful, our vision changes, our understanding about different people changes. We begin to realize that at the end of the day, this anitya, nitya, which we begin to realize that everything in the world is temporary, not permanent. It is unreal, also unreal, not from the point of illusion or whatever, which also it is at a different level of understanding. But at least I begin to understand that everything in the world has a beginning and it has an end, and that ultimately Ishvara is beyond time. So all this I get to understand by developing this Viveka. So we will just chant the shloka and then we'll kind of go through it a little more in detail next time. Yo mam ajamanadim cha, yo mam ajamanadim cha, veti lokamaheshwaram, asammudasamartyeshu, sarvapapai pramuchyate. So he says, Yahamam ajam anadhim cha. So that one who recognizes me as ajam, anadhim, ajam, which is birthless, and anadhim, who is beyond a cause, beginningless, veti loka maheshwaram, and who knows me as the Lord of the world. Loka, which is a world, Maheshwaram as the Lord. Such a person is asammudaha sahamatyeshu. He is the one who is completely not influenced when he is in this world. And such a person is also liberated from all sins. Sarva papai pramuchyate, one who's liberated from all sins. So we'll look at this a little more closer next time. Okay. June 19th. Oh my God. June 19th. That's a spelling mistake there. So we'll meet on June 19th. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.